E poi gli alieni ce l'hanno l'anima o
But the aliens, do they have a soul
non ce l'hanno?
or don't they have it?
Loro vogliono quella cosa lì
They want that very thing
che noi abbiamo
that we have
e che loro non hanno.
and that they don't have. On minute 1932, we're back with the reptilians.
Uno strano essere alto
A strange being entered.
2,40 m,
He was tall, 2 meters and 40,
con la coda.
with a tail.
Sembrava un coccodrillone
He looked like a massive crocodile.
in piedi.
Standing up. On minute 25, there is something we can see when it comes to his specific usage of language. As a linguist, I would like to analyze that too.
E la parte mentale
And the mental part
è indipendente dai valori di energia.
is independent from the values of energy or energetic values. 32-37, more on the aliens.
L'alieno viene
The alien comes
e ha paura di morire
and is afraid to die.
e ci prende quella parte per rigenerarsi,
And he takes that part, meaning the soul, to regenerate himself.
e se no muore.
Otherwise he dies. Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and as you know, I've been recently engaging with these alleged findings underneath the pyramids of Giza. Now this video here, which is the one that has been most successful, is also the one that has received harsher critiques, and one of the things that I wanted to address is the following. As you know, on this video I'm providing a translation from the language used during the conference, which was Italian, which is of course my first language. This is the conference, and as you know, one of the things that I complain about on this video is the way the conference was organized, the context, the lack of professionalism, and some questionable sections. For instance, the fact that in the very beginning we see a massive alien, which I think appears to be a reptilian. People that are countering this argument that I'm presenting have been telling me, well, but you should divide the sort of context in which this is happening, the conference, the channel that is hosting it, which sure often pushes this kind of ideas about the reptilians and the aliens and all that kind of stuff, from the actual scientists, so Corrado Malanga, Armando Mei and Filippo Biondi, and the sort of information that they are sharing. In other words, simply because they had to use this medium, this conference shouldn't bleed onto the information they're presenting. So I shouldn't allow this context to fundamentally sway the way I judge their research. Now here's the thing. On paper, this would be a fair criticism, and I always recognize fair criticism, in theory. No university is going to allow them to do this, so they had to go to this little corky scenario, and they had to tolerate this that, you know, they showed, and the stargates and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, they have nothing to do with this sort of discussion. Well, here's the problem, and that's why I decided to make this video. On the internet, specifically on YouTube, there are several interviews that have to do with Professor Corrado Malanga. This is a very old one from 13 years ago. This is another one from a year ago. This one is from 2 years ago. And then there is this one from 1 month ago, which is the one that I'm gonna refer to today. Of course, all of these interviews have one thing in common. They are in Italian. So if you don't know Italian, I would absolutely justify the critique that you have given me. Here's the thing though. Today I'm gonna translate some sections that I've specifically selected from this interview, but I will link the full interview down below for you to be able to double check that what I'm translating is correct. It is quite clear that this is exactly what Corrado Malanga pushes, believes, teaches as factual. In this very interview, as you will see, I'll prove it in a minute, he tells us about the reptilians. He tells us about the many different races of aliens that have been coming to Earth since 500,000 years in the past. His words, about the abductees, about the technology that these aliens are putting inside our bodies, about how these aliens are coming here because they want to steal our souls, which are divided into 3 things, but the aliens want one of those things because the aliens don't have a soul, and so they need this soul to increase their life, and some aliens have physical bodies, some other aliens are just spiritual. There is no God, but there is only you, and the aliens are real and have been kidnapping people, and he's got the proof because he saw the microchips. I just given you a too long didn't read of what we're gonna see today. Before we jump into the actual interview and we confirm that he is indeed saying these things, I would like to make one very specific disclaimer. This is not a hit piece on Corrado Malanga. This is not me trying to shame him for what he believes. He is free. He's free to believe whatever he wants. He can sit down and worship Odin for all I care. And if you yourself do believe that there are reptilians out there and that there are greys out there, you're free to do it, and I wouldn't mock you for it. What I'm doing here is not mocking this man for what he believes. What I'm doing here is providing you, who are interested in their findings when it comes to the pyramids and their interpretation of the results of the scans from the SAR technology that they used underneath the pyramids, so that you can see this from a full context. Now, if after you watch this, you think, you know what, I also believe all of these things. To me, this is giving me more confidence in what Corrado Malanga is presenting. More power to you. But at least you're making an informed decision, and you have now been exposed to what this man has been pushing in Italy with his books, with his interviews, with his publications, and with his conferences. On the other hand, if you are a bit like me and you think the majority of what he said to me sounds like complete utter nonsense, and that now gives me a reason to doubt his interpretations of the otherwise plausible tech that the other scientist, Filippo Biondi, has been explaining to us, then great, at least now you can form your own opinion and use your own critical thinking to decide whether you want to consider this man's interpretation trustworthy or not. It's not, however, a video where I'm trying to debunk their findings or try to state that there is nothing underneath the pyramids. I don't know if their tech works. What I do know is that I do not personally believe anything this man says. But this is just my personal opinion. The first extract that I would like to translate is on minute 7.
Un problema da risolvere
A problem to resolve
è che la gente su questo pianeta non aveva capito
is that people on this planet did not understand
che 500.000 anni di storia erano
that 500,000 years of history have been
su questo pianeta state pilotate,
on this planet have been
pilotati da
piloted
altre entità che venivano da fuori,
by other entities that come from outside.
da altre entità che venivano da fuori. Ecco, il riuscire a far capire alla
To be able to make people understand
gente che noi stavamo lavorando su un problema importante,
that we had been working on an important problem.
Per me era un target da raggiungere.
For me, it was an objective or a target that needed to be reached or achieved. The next extract is from minute 7:37.
Perché sì, te spieghi alla gente, guardate
Because yes, you explain to people, look,
che ci sono gli alieni,
aliens are out there.
vengono su questo pianeta,
They come to this planet.
fanno delle cose.
They do things.
Abbiamo scoperto perché,
We have discovered why. We found out why.
abbiamo scoperto come,
We found out how.
abbiamo scoperto le collusioni che
We have discovered the collusions
l'alieno ha con i nostri servizi segreti,
that aliens have with our secret services,
con i capi del mondo.
with the heads of the world.
Abbiamo
Ma i
scoperto
capi del mondo lo sanno che questi sono alieni? I servizi
Question from the interviewer, but do the heads of the world know that these are aliens?
segreti lo sanno che questi sono
The secret services, do they know that these are aliens?
Certo,
Of course,
lo sanno,
they know,
ma non te lo dicono.
but they don't tell you.
Per esempio, il secondo
For example,
reparto dell'aeronautica in
the second corps of the Air Force
Italia, banalmente,
in Italy
nel nostro piccolo, c'ha un gruppo di sparute persone che vengono
has a small group of people
sostanzialmente sostituite ogni 6 mesi, se no
which they change or substitute every 6 months,
sanno troppo,
otherwise they know too much.
che si dovrebbero interessare del problema ufologico,
They should take care of or should study, we could say, the UFO problem.
che ora non si chiama più UFO,
That today is not called UFO anymore,
oggetto volante non identificato, un
unidentified flying object,
acronimo inglese,
an English acronym,
ma si chiama UAP,
but it's called UAP.
cioè
In other words,
qualcosa di ancora più vuoto di contenuti.
something even more empty of meaning or content.
Prima era un fenomeno
Before, it was a phenomenon,
ufologico,
a ufologic phenomenon.
ora neanche più un fenomeno.
Now it's not even a phenomenon.
Sostanzialmente tutte le fotografie,
All of the photographs,
tutti i filmati,
all of the movies or clips,
tutte le testimonianze
all of the testimonies
Tutte le cicatrici
all of
che
the scars
portano sul corpo le persone che hanno avuto a che fare con questi esseri
that the people that had to do or that dealt with these beings carry on their bodies
vengono misteriosamente bypassate,
are mysteriously forgotten, bypassed,
dimenticate, non guardate
not looked at
dai giornali.
from the media. The next section is on minute 10-12, and he's talking about the abductees, so the people that have been abducted or allegedly abducted by aliens, and that he and some colleagues of his were interviewing and as they were applying hypnosis to try and discover what sort of experiences they had but had forgotten about. I would like to underline that this is something that will come back a lot, that he considers to be factual proof or evidence. If under hypnosis you tell this man that you were flying on a dragon, I wouldn't be surprised if he considered that as evidence. Just adding my own commentary here, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but as you will see, he does take what people say under hypnosis as fact. And he justifies this with references to statistical case numbers that personally, you'll see.
Non funziona così. Noi avevamo gente
We had people
che si svegliava la mattina con delle cicatrici sul corpo
that would wake up in the morning with scars on their body
che alla sera prima, quando era andato a letto, non aveva.
that the previous night as they were going to bed they did not have.
E si chiedeva, ma come
And they would ask themselves,
mai ho queste cicatrici?
but how come? Why do I have these scars?
Noi facevamo delle analisi e
We were performing analyses
scoprivamo che sotto queste cicatrici
and we would discover that underneath these scars,
c'erano i segni di una evidente operazione chirurgica.
that under these scars there were the signs of an obvious surgical procedure.
L'analisi di queste persone in ambiente ipnotico
The analysis of these people in an hypnotic environment
mostrava il recupero di una
would show the recovery of
memoria
a memory
che queste persone avevano.
that these people had.
Il recupero della memoria di tutti questi soggetti,
The recovery of the memory of all of these subjects,
tutti, era uguale.
all of them was the same.
A un certo punto si è aperto il muro,
At one point, the wall opened up.
è entrato uno strano essere alto
A strange being entered.
2,40 m,
He was tall, 2 meters and 40,
con la coda.
with a tail.
Sembrava un coccodrillone
He looked like a massive crocodile,
in piedi
standing up,
e degli esseri piccoletti,
and very small beings,
neri, con 3
black,
dita e il
with 3 fingers
pollice opponibile, il
and an opposable thumb,
quarto,
the 4th digit,
con uno strano, cattivo odore,
with a strange foul smell,
che hanno tentato, io ero immobilizzato, di
that tried to, as I was immobilized,
prendermi, di
to take me and lift me up
sollevarmi e di portarmi attraverso il muro fuori.
and to bring me through the wall outside.
E fuori c'era una strana cosa,
And outside there was a strange thing,
una macchina
a machine,
rotante,
rotating,
volante,
flying,
rotonda, in cui io ero portato dentro
and they would put me inside it.
e attraverso delle stanze ero posto su un
And through some rooms I was placed on
tavolo,
a table,
operatorio
a surgical table, characterized
caratterizzato sempre dal
always
fatto che c'era un solo piede
by the fact that there was only one leg
che lo teneva, il tavolo
that was supporting it,
operatorio, fatto così,
made this way,
svasato. Tutti
a bit like a vase.
lo raccontavano nello
Everybody told this story
stesso modo
in the same way,
e lì accadeva qualcosa.
and there something happened.
Il soggetto veniva sostanzialmente operato
The subject was practically operated on.
chirurgicamente, sì, certo, e poi noi
Yes, of course.
trovavamo con la risonanza magnetica
And then with the nuclear magnetic resonance we would find,
nucleare, con varie spettroscopie fatte
with several spectroscopies
sul corpo,
done on the body,
le tracce di queste operazioni
We would find the traces of these surgical operations
e le tracce dei microchip che venivano introdotti nel
and the traces of the microchips that were introduced
corpo di
in the body
queste persone
of these people,
e le trovavamo sempre negli stessi posti.
and we would find them always in the same places. After all of this, he proceeds to talk about how these microchips were made of a material that didn't have the same number of isotopes in it and clearly was of alien origin. He says the scientists did see this, but hid it. No proof, unfortunately. The next section is from minute 17:43, and we are told more about these aliens.
E poi gli alieni ce l'hanno l'anima o
But the aliens, do they have a soul
non ce l'hanno?
or don't they have it?
Perché nelle antiche scritture
Because in the ancient scriptures,
gli alieni si potrebbero paragonare a quelle cose che gli antichi vedevano e
the aliens could be compared to those things that the ancients would see,
che chiamavano angeli.
that they would call angels.
E nella Bibbia c'è scritto
And in the Bible, it's written
che gli angeli non hanno anima.
that angels don't have a soul. Now, before I continue on to this part, I would like to underline that this is incorrect. In the Bible, there isn't one single passage that tells us that angels don't have a soul. This is a speculation that some people in the faith do have. So there are some people that believe that. I'm not one of those. But to state that the Bible says this is incorrect. He will, as you will see, mention the Bible several times. I would like to underline he's not religious, clearly, as there is a section in another interview that I watched where he says that there is no God, as in my opinion, up to this point, and you will see this, the sort of ideas that he's pushing appear to be a mix between Scientology and solipsism. But I'll defend this in a little bit. Let's continue. On minute 1932, we're back with the reptilians.
L'ultimo arrivato. In questi libri gli americani dicevano: guardate
In these books, Americans said,
che noi ci siamo trovati di fronte a queste persone
look, we found these people,
che sono traumatizzate
they're traumatized,
e il loro trauma è sempre lo stesso.
and their trauma is always the same.
Il loro sogno è sempre lo stesso.
Their dream is always the same.
C'è una specie di serpente
There is some kind of snake
con la faccia da coccodrillo
with the face of a crocodile
che mi entra in camera,
that enters in my room.
alto 2,40 m,
He's 2 meters and 40 tall,
accompagnato da questi piccoletti,
accompanied by these small ones.
e poi non ci sono solo loro, ci sono altre razze.
And then it's not just them, there are other races.
Questi vengono, mi prendono, mi
They come, they take me,
portano, mi
they take me away,
fanno delle cose, io non ho capito,
they do things to me that I don't understand,
in qualche modo io dimentico.
and then somehow I forget.
Ricordo solo attraverso delle opportune sedute di ipnosi.
I only remember through hypnotic sessions.
E attraverso queste sedute
And through these sessions,
tutti raccontavano
everyone retold
le stesse identiche cose.
the exact same things.
Centinaia di migliaia di persone.
Hundreds of thousands of people.
Cioè la statistica è una scienza vera quando si
Statistics is a real science when
tratta di numeri alti.
it deals with high numbers.
Noi in Italia abbiamo utilizzato le stesse tecniche dall'inizio che avevano usato
In Italy, we have used the same techniques that since the beginning
gli americani,
the Americans have used.
cioè sul nostro
Okay. At this point, I would like to ask Mr. Malanga if he is interested in a discussion when it comes to this. Hundreds of thousands of people said the exact same thing is a massively bold, and I would like to underline, unscientific way to put it. The exact same thing, hundreds of thousands. Or are you applying selective bias and only discussing the ones that appear to be recalling something similar that then you call exactly the same? Exactly the same is a very specific statement within the field of academics and science. Is it exactly the same or is it not? Because the first one only mentioned the crocodile and the small people that were smelling, and then the other one that now you mentioned said multiple races of aliens and there was no mention of a smell. Also, how do we know that what these people are saying, even if, and of course hundreds of thousands is nonsense, but even if there was a certain continuity within some subjects that say that they experience these things, that of course I cannot neither deny nor confirm, I don't know. But what I'm saying is, even if, how do you know this is not something that they are copycats? How do you know that this is not something that even their subconscious is making up based on stories that they've been exposed to that then influenced this sort of retelling? He never questions any of this, which to me is very unscientific as a methodology. Not to mention his incorrect explanation and mentioning of the Bible, which is not the first time he does that. And I am someone who has read the Bible multiple times in his life in several languages, and it is a text that I personally love to explore and study, so I can spot immediately when he says something that is not present in the Bible. Once again, I see a lack in his ability to interpret. An interpreter is what we are entrusting him to be with the results of the scans. On minute 25, there is something we can see when it comes to his specific usage of language. As a linguist, I would like to analyze that too.
Era il racconto di un istante dell'abduction.
This is the retelling of the instant of abduction, of the abduction.
L'istante in cui la tua parte animica,
The instant in which your parte animica, that's what I mean. Let me tell you about this. So, in Italy, in Italian, we have a word which is anima. Anima can be translated in English as soul, and it can be normally connected to anything spiritual. It's kind of an alternative way to say spirit. In some religion, there may be a difference, a slight difference between what you mean by spirit and what you mean by soul. But in general, as a vernacular usage, when you say anima in Italian, you're saying soul in English, S-O-U-L. What he does, he doesn't call it anima. In fact, even the interviewer at one point tells him, so you mean anima. And by the way, to give you a connection to English, it's the same root that you guys use when you say words such as animated. So soul in Italian, anima, it is something that gives you, that animates you in a way. So you can recognize it like that. He doesn't say anima, he says parte animica, which could be like anemic part. So as you can see, he does this a lot. Either he used highly complex vocabulary that to the listener means absolutely nothing, but it sounds smart, I guess. Or he will substitute a regular word, anima, soul, and create a more fancy, complex sounding version of it that no one else uses. Parte animica. No one else uses that, as far as I know. Never heard it in my life, because it makes it sound wow. I mean, he's not talking about the soul, he's talking about the anemic part. That's what he's doing. A third thing that he does linguistically, that you will notice later on as we continue this analysis, is that he will take a regular word, but use it in a way that is completely different to how you would normally use that word, giving it a completely different sense or meaning. So he will extrapolate a word and fill it with a different semantic meaning inside it. He does this a lot.
che noi non sapevamo nemmeno che cosa fosse,
We didn't even know what it was.
Cioè
Veniva-
l'anima.
So the soul, asks the guy.
sì,
Yes,
chiamiamola anima.
let's call it anima. Let's call it soul. Parte animica.
È una convenzione,
It's a convention.
è una cosa.
It's a thing.
Veniva staccata,
It was removed from the body.
veniva portata all'interno di un altro cilindro
It would be brought inside another cylinder
dove c'era un altro essere umano
where there was another human being,
che veniva fatto vivere perché
and he was made alive
quella cosa lì gli dava la vita.
because that thing gave him life.
Poi questa cosa
Then this thing
veniva ripresa e rimessa nel contenitore originale,
was taken back and placed again in the original container,
dove sarebbe stata ripresa la prossima volta.
where it would have been taken again next time.
Loro vogliono quella cosa lì,
They, meaning the aliens, want that very thing
che noi abbiamo
that we have
e che loro non hanno.
and that they don't have.
Però capite bene che a questo
But you do understand that at this point,
punto noi dicemmo,
we said,
un momento, fermiamo
hold on a minute,
la palla, cerchiamo di capire che cos'è
let's try to understand what
questa parte che parla.
this part that speaks is. All right, next. Around minute 26-25 is where he goes into the philosophical explanation of what this parte animica, so the soul, is. And you will notice that that's the part where he starts going into this, once again, philosophical discussion on how your soul is divided into 3 sections. No idea where he gets that from, by the way, but let's go.
Queste 3 parti
These 3 parts,
divise
divided,
erano la nostra coscienza.
were our conscience.
All'inizio
At the beginning
dei tempi
of time,
erano unificate.
they were united.
C'era una cosa sola.
There was only one thing.
Per farla breve,
To cut a long story short,
si capì che all'interno del nostro
we understood that inside our body,
contenitore,
our
ci
container,
sono tre cose
there are three things
vive
alive,
che sono noi.
and they are us.
Una parte animica,
A anemic part, the soul,
il femminile.
the feminine,
Una parte mentale,
a mental part,
l'essere androgino,
the androgynous being,
e una parte spirituale che
and a spiritual part,
è la parte maschile di sé.
which is the male part of the self.
Queste tre parti
These three parts,
divise
which are divided,
erano la nostra coscienza.
were our conscience.
All'inizio dei tempi
At the beginning of time,
erano unificate.
they were united.
C'era una cosa sola.
There was only one thing.
Poi qualcosa ha diviso la coscienza dell'essere umano
Then something divided the conscience of human beings
e le ha separate
and have separated them
in tre parti.
in three parts.
La parte maschile del sé,
The male part of the self,
la parte femminile e la
the female part,
parte androgina, con
and the androgynous part,
tre coscienze diverse,
as three different or separate consciences.
ognuna delle quali dentro un contenitore
Each and every single one of them inside a container
non sapeva dell'esistenza dell'altro.
is not aware of the existence of the other.
E il contenitore che cosa sarebbe stato?
And what would this container have been?
Quello che i religiosi chiamano il tabernacolo della Santissima Trinità.
It's what religious people call the tabernacle of the Holy Trinity.
Padre, Figlio e Spirito Santo,
Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost
altro non erano che anima, mente e spirito. E noi
are nothing more than the soul, mind, and spirit.
che cosa potevamo andare a dire agli scienziati? Guardate che abbiamo trovato l'essenza dell'anima?
So could we have gone to the scientists and tell them that we had found the essence of the soul?
Non ci avrebbe creduto nessuno.
No one would have believed us.
Così abbiamo dovuto modellizzare questa cosa.
So we had to create a model out of this thing.
Nessuno. Così abbiamo dovuto modellizzare questa cosa e descriverla sotto forma di vettori e di tensori.
And describe it through vectors and tensori. Tensors? I haven't got a clue. I don't know, guys. I don't know what that word means. Back to the aliens.
Queste parti. La parte animica. Per quale motivo? All'alieno
The alien
interessa solo una di queste parti.
is only interested in one of these parts.
La parte animica.
The anemic part, the soul.
Per quale motivo?
Why?
Ed era
For what reason?
semplice.
And it was simple.
La risposta venne dalla stessa parte animica.
The answer came from the very anemic part,
Perché loro non hanno questa cosa.
because they don't have this thing.
Loro non ce l'hanno.
They don't have it.
Loro sono invidiosi di noi
They envy us
perché noi siamo esseri completi.
because we are complete beings.
Questo era il discorso che veniva nelle migliaia di ipnosi fatte.
This is the discussion that came through the thousands of hypnosis that we did.
Loro sono esseri incompleti.
They are incomplete beings.
In quell'istante mi si
In that moment,
svelò anche un'altra cosa,
another thing was revealed to me.
cioè i racconti che ci sono nel mito.
In other words, the tales that we get in the myth,
Sono tutti
Cos'è
così.
il mito?
they are all like this. Interviewer asks, what is myth? This is the part now that he's going to take the word myth, which I think we can all understand. When you say myth, you usually think, at least in context, when you talk about the ancient period, if you say myth, everyone would think, oh, he's talking about the ancient Greeks, he's talking about the things that were believed by the Romans, classical antiquity. Usually, when we say myths and legends, and then you can give us of the Norse, of medieval Europeans, of ancient Japanese. Usually that's how you use myth, right? Let me show you how he uses myth now, because he has been asked, what is myth? Which takes us to the third language model that he uses.
Il mito è una fotografia
Myth is a photo
che in un solo fotogramma
that in just one photogram
contiene il passato, il presente ed il futuro.
contains the past, the present, and the future.
La differenza che c'è tra la storia e il mito è
The difference between history that we have between history and myth
semplice.
is
La
simple.
storia è storicistica,
History is historic,
cioè
meaning
da un punto di vista scientifico
from a scientific point of view,
la storia viene trattata in modo diverso a
history is dealt in a different way depending on
secondo di chi scrive i libri di storia.
Who is writing these history books?
Se ci sono i comunisti a scrivere i libri di
If communists are writing history books,
storia, ci sarà un resoconto completamente diverso.
there will be a completely different telling of the events.
Come se invece i libri di storia li scrivessero i non comunisti,
As opposed to how non-communists would write the history books.
i fascisti.
The
Cioè,
fascists.
c'è il detto che i vincitori scrivono il libro di storia dove
There is a saying whereby history is written by the victors.
loro sono i buoni e gli altri erano i cattivi.
They are the good guys and the other people are the bad guys. Oh, of course, I'd like to underline, hopping outside from the translation for a moment, this would be one of the things that I can at least partially agree, because I have a dedicated video on whether or not it's true that history is written by the victors, and I kind of say it is partially true, but it's something that needs to be, it's not like this categorical, all-encompassing statement that defeats all history. History is written by historians first and foremost, and history is written through evidence first and foremost. But it is absolutely true that local political powers will influence not only what's been written, but also how the things that have been written are read, and that's propaganda. So I have several videos dedicated to that. As I say, there are some sections that I may agree, although then again in this instance I'm agreeing with the interviewer, but I think he agrees with that sentiment. So it's not like that I disagree with everything, but at around minute 30-40 seconds in is when he explains to us why the aliens want our souls.
Ora più di nessuno. Ma perché a questo punto l'alieno voleva la parte animica?
But why, at this point, does the alien want the soul? I'm just going to stop saying anemic part. I'm just going to say soul.
Perché la parte animica aveva una caratteristica.
Because the soul has a characteristic.
Era caratterizzata da un asse dello spazio,
It's characterized by a spatial axis,
da un asse dell'energia,
by the axis of energy,
ma non da un asse del tempo.
but not with a temporal axis or axis of time.
Cioè era sostanzialmente immortale,
In other words, it's substantially immortal,
indipendente dal tempo.
independent from time,
Mentre la parte spirituale
while the spiritual part
era indipendente dallo spazio
is independent from space,
e la parte mentale era
the mind and the mental part
indipendente dai valori di energia.
is independent from the values of energy or energetic values.
Cosa vuol dire essere indipendente dall'asse del tempo?
What does it mean to be independent from the axis of time?
Vuol dire essere immortale.
It means to be immortal. Right. I would like to underline at this point, if you thought that that was weird in the sense that you couldn't really understand what he was on about, that's nothing. That's nothing compared to what he usually does. Particularly, there is a video, an interview that I might cover. I just don't want to make now a 2 hours long video. But there is another interview where he explains the soul through quantum physics, or he tries to, and you have seen nothing. Like, you watch that, you'll understand 7 words out of 1,000 that he uses. But here we are. Next. 32-37, more on the aliens.
L'alieno viene
The alien comes
e ha paura di morire
and is afraid to die.
e ci prende quella parte per rigenerarsi,
And he takes that part, meaning the soul, to regenerate himself.
se no muore.
Otherwise he dies.
Un po' come fanno
Then there is a section that was redacted because he says that they say that their question would have been censored, so I haven't got a clue what they asked him here. Oh, sorry, I kept myself top right. I'll fix it. But anyways, you could hear it at least. I apologize for that. Anyways, in conclusion, there are plenty of other sections where he talks about these aliens, and then there is a whole side, a whole part where he talks about what sounds like solipsism. I'll give you the definition of that. Solipsism, from Latin souls alone and self, is a philosophical idea that only one mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known as and might not exist outside the mind. So it seems like that's what he is saying. And I remember these sections of this other interview that I watched where he was mostly preaching a different, slightly altered version of solipsism, where he says, you're the only one existing. I don't know if he means that there is only one actor and everyone else is an NPC, or if he means that every person is its own single actor in their own world. I have no idea. As I was saying, it's complicated to understand, mostly because to me, a lot of the things he says, it's like if you take a bunch of words, put them inside a box, move it, shake it around and see what happens. But anyways, these aliens come. There are also other interviews where he says how these aliens suck your soul out, because there are aliens with a body, aliens without a body. The aliens without the body want to be installed inside the body of humans so that they can preserve their knowledge and culture. And it's interesting that rather than giving us examples of, maybe because this is a super scientist, a genetist of the aliens, no, he gives the example of a plumber for whatever reason, and that once the aliens want to preserve that, and therefore they take these spirits of these aliens that don't have a body and are placed, maybe because they died, and they place them inside human containers in order to continue. So that's one thing, it's kind of a demonic possession, but the alien version. And then there are other aliens that do have a body and don't want to die. They suck, they aspirate, they suck the souls of humans, that they are these abductees, in order to put them inside their body so that they can cheat death, I guess. This is what he's saying. And it is somewhat similar to some of the basis ideas that you also find in Scientology. So,
Gli uomini sono immortali,
mankind is immortal,
ma gli angeli
but angels
sono invidiosi degli uomini
envy mankind,
perché gli uomini hanno quella cosa
because mankind has that thing
che gli angeli non hanno.
that the angels don't have.
E allora
And then
i racconti di abduction
the stories of abduction,
che comparivano su tutti i giornali a destra e a sinistra.
Abduction
Vuol
vuol
dire
dire-
abduction means
adduzione,
adduzione,
cioè rapimento
so an alien kidnap,
alieno, no kidnap
but
come
not kidnap,
si potrebbe dire in americano,
like you would say in American,
cioè rapimento.
meaning rapimento, kidnap.
Abduction è proprio il termine che
Abduction is the term
si usa per dire
that
sono
we say to mean
venuti gli alieni e
the aliens arrived
mi hanno preso
and took me
per i loro scopi.
for their purposes.
Noi dovevamo capire quali
We had to understand
erano gli scopi degli
what are these purposes, these goals of the aliens,
alieni.
Esatto.
Innanzitutto, no? Cioè,
first and foremost, meaning looking for the motive.
e il movente si trovò guardando nella mente delle persone che erano
And the motive was found as we looked into the mind of the people
state addotte.
that were abducted,
Cioè,
meaning
si utilizzò la ipnosi
we used the regressive hypnosis,
regressiva, ericksoniana.
the Erickson type of regressive hypnosis.
Gli americani questa cosa l'avevano già fatta.
Okay, next, make your own mind. The next section that I would suggest you to check out, but it's kind of long, so I'm just gonna tell you with my own words what he said, but feel free to go and watch it, is the part on minute 22, to give you the exact 22:07, where he's recanting, recalling, explaining this experience that was retold by one of the alleged abductees during one of these sessions. And he says that basically his soul was removed from his body, and he was having some sort of out-of-body experience when he would see his own body inside of a metal container which was laid horizontally, and then there was a vertical one with a sort of a copy of himself or someone else, perhaps another body, and now they were moving around with his soul and implanting it on something else. It's kind of a long session, so I just want to skip it for now, simply because, yeah, it's what someone said, but he gives weight to that, which is the part that kind of confuses me a little bit. I have recently shared what I think may be a more plausible finding underneath the pyramids, if it is true that these scans actually worked and there wasn't any interference due to the material underneath and whatnot. Now, if the scans did work, what could they be? To me, rather than saying the holes of a menti, of power generators, or whatever the heck other people think, which kind of borderlines to sci-fi, I would love for that to be the truth. And I would be the first one to show it if there is evidence. I'm not going to do the cover-up like some people accuse me of. No, I'll be the first one to show it if they show it to me first. But I did come up with a more plausible explanation, and you'll find a link in the description. But for now, let's listen to the man himself, and then you can form your opinion. All of this to say, once again, not trying to shame anyone. As you see, I'm not pointing my finger and laughing. That's not what I'm doing. A couple of times I was a little confused by the way he was explaining things. But if you are aware of the sort of stuff that he pushes, by the way, he used to teach at university, he used to be a chemistry teacher, but he doesn't do that anymore. Because, and from his own words, he has been in the sector of ufology since he was 15. If you are in ufology, then great. I just found you someone to watch. Knock yourself out. Have fun. For me, he speaks about science. He speaks about scientific methods. But then he talks about this situation. And at that point, I'm not going to trust him as an educator, as a scientist, as an academic. I'm not, as I say, the reason why I don't... Now, for some people, these ideas... Now, some of you will believe these things, but for many of you, these thoughts will be outlandish. The reason why I'm not pointing the finger is because I'm a Christian, differently from him, so I also believe in things that I cannot prove to you. I believe in the resurrection of Christ. So if you want to believe that Athena is blessing you today, or if you want to believe that the aliens are stealing your soul like this man, you can do it. You can't prove it. I can't prove it. So I'm not going to make fun of you. The difference, however, is that first, I'm not mixing my faith with science. These are two separate subjects and they shouldn't be mixed. You can believe in both. By the way, I can make a dedicated video if you want. I know some people will disagree with this statement. I do think you can believe in both. With that being said, I don't mix them. I don't use faith to build a computer. Likewise, I don't use science to find God or to interpret faith. I keep them separate within their own spheres. And you're free to disagree with me and say, no, Metatron, I think what you believe in is complete nonsense. Whatever. I respect your ability to say that. I respect your ability to believe that. But what I'm not going to do is to use my faith to discuss the ancient Romans or to discuss an archaeological finding. I'm not going to do that. And in fact, whenever I do make videos that are linguistic and secular in nature when discussing the Bible, I do let people know about my bias. I do say, guys, do keep in mind that I'm a Christian. So I recognize that I have some biases, and that's why I work with a team to try and reduce the effects on those biases. And in fact, it's kind of funny that sometimes people that do point the finger at me and are like, well, we can see that your Christian bias in this statement you made on minute 16. I'm like, well, that statement was not from me. That was from my lead researcher who is an atheist. So it's actually kind of funny that now I have to call him and tell him, hey, did you know that you have a Christian bias even though you're an atheist? Welcome. You're one of us, I guess. All of that to say, that's why I have a team, so that we can call each other out when the biases that we all naturally have come out, and we try to reduce them as much as possible. With this person, I don't think that that's happening. So when he interprets the findings underneath the pyramids, there may well be a real technology, because I have no reason to doubt the likes of Biondi, Filippo Biondi, and the usage of the tech. Also, I have no reason to believe it 100% since this is the first time that the tech was ever used the way they did. It's a new technique. So until you prove it without a shade of a doubt that the technique works, I can doubt it all I want. But I have no reason to necessarily doubt it until there is some evidence. But I do have reason to doubt the ability of this man to interpret data correctly, because he has all of this stuff in his head. So when he sees an image of the colors that he can't identify because he's colorblind, by the way, but he sees all of these color shades and he sees something that kind of looks like a pillar. How can I trust that he doesn't see the aliens and the reptilians in there, since that's where he's coming from? Not to mention, at the end of that conference, he specifically said that the reason why his evidence cannot be questioned is because he used AI, and AI never gets anything wrong. That's another statement that is objectively false, and this demonstrates to me that what he considers as categorical oftentimes is not, because we know that the AI gets stuff wrong all the time. Regardless, this was a video not to discredit this man, not to slander this man. I'm not doing that. But this is a video specifically made to respond to those people that said, you were biased because you saw the reptilian at the beginning of that conference, but you shouldn't have considered that as a fair representation of what these people are presenting. Well, this man believes in the reptilian that are 2 meters and 40 centimeters tall, and he believes that it's still your soul and all the rest of the stuff. So yeah, I think the reptilian was a good representation of the type of person that is now presenting these findings. At least when it comes to Corrado Malanga. Once again, I don't know if Filippo Biondi believes in the reptilians. I'm more than happy to ask him if that were the case. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Stay curious.